Wow, this is a nice place to be and a nice audience. Good afternoon. I'm Katrien van der Hooijdonk. I work at VITO, the Sustainable Research and Technology Organization, where I coordinate international water partnerships.
Hi everyone, my name is Toon and I'm the innovation expert at Enable, the Belgian development agency. And together with VITO, we're building technology and innovation partnerships between Europe and Africa, the second largest continent in the world and our nearest neighboring continent from where we stand here on this festival site. We believe Africa is the future. And for Europe to become part of it, we need to reignite our story together.
As I work in VITO as a researcher, I would like to start with a little experiment. It's a very simple one. Everyone can do it. So please have a look at the arrows on the screen, and I would like to invite you to point in the direction of the arrows. Go ahead. Thank you. I see a lot of hands pointing that way. Yes, but I also see some hands going that right. And both are right, because these arrows are pointing in both directions. What we just experienced is perception. It's the way we look at things and how we perceive them.
And we all have our own way of seeing the world around us, especially when it comes to our perception of Africa. And I was reminded about this a couple of months ago, when the following message appeared on my LinkedIn. According to a report of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, among the 10 fastest growing economies in the world, 6 are African. And all of these 6 countries are partner countries of the Belgian Development Corporation. So within my own social media bubble, this generated quite a buzz, with reactions that went from excitement and confirmation of what people were seeing themselves to total amazement about some of the countries in the list, like Niger, that are considered to be quite unsafe and unstable. So given the reactions it triggered, I was quite surprised and even disappointed that none of the mainstream media in Belgium picked up this message. Instead, around the time the report was released in April this year, some other items on Africa made the news. About terrifying new diseases in Congo, about devastating floods in Kenya, and about migrants tragically dying on their way to Europe. And let us be clear, this isn't fake news. These struggles are real. But our fixation on Africa's problems and misery is keeping us from seeing its opportunities. If we only focus on the arrows to the right, it's hard to see the ones to the left.
And now I would like to share the moment my perception on Africa shifted. It's already 16 years ago, sitting on a shady terrace in Tanzania, a few days before the wedding of my friends Grace and James. James sitting relaxed with his Nokia in his hand, mentioning that he would transfer some money to his mother so that she could start traveling and arrive on time to the wedding. Me trying to be helpful, I offered him to join him to the bank. But he said, "Katrien, don't you worry, I just sent some money with my phone." I was completely confused. It was 2008. In that time, I needed a laptop, a card reader, a card to transfer money. So,
Yeah.
James was using M-Pesa. It's a telecom service for sending mobile credit. So you can pay with it or withdraw money from one of the millions of kiosks in Eastern Africa. No bank infrastructure, no banks needed. It's a brilliant service. And in Belgium, it took us another 9 years to share money with our phones. So I was very excited when I used Payconic for the first time, the M-Pesa for Belgium. So the idea that Africa is always catching up with Europe is simply wrong.
And how do VITO and Enable come into the picture when talking about perception? Well, Katrien and I and many of our colleagues, we work with African partners and organizations. And this is taking us to different parts of the continent. So as privileged witnesses, we are impressed about some of the things we see happening in Africa. And we want others to see the opportunities we see. So today, we'd like to expand our way of thinking about the continent. And let's start with the essentials. Africa is not a single country, but 54 different countries with all their natural, cultural, and economic diversity. And this might seem obvious, but in our media, Africa is way too often reduced to one single narrative, that of conflict, poverty, and underdevelopment. We want to highlight some of the positive stories, the ones that are easily overlooked and that showcase Africa's energy and potential.
And Africa is rich in valuable resources. 30% of world's critical minerals are in Africa, 70% of world's cobalt, and 40% of the global energy potential. And its resources position Africa at a global energy transition, as we all need these minerals for solar panels, home batteries, and our electric vehicles.
But there's another more important resource that might become Africa's single biggest asset for the future. It's people. Africa's youthful population. Today, half of all Africans are younger than 19 years old. That's a dazzling 22 years difference with the median age here in Belgium. While Europe grays, Africa's youth blooms, and it's growing fast. Africa's population is expected to double in the next 25 years. By 2050, 1 out of 3 of the world's youth will live in Africa.
And this youth is more connected than ever. 1 out of 2 has a mobile phone, their main device for accessing the internet. 4G connections are tended to double in the coming 5 years, and those enable this youth to do business in just a few clicks. They trade on WhatsApp, they launch a new technology startup, and often they start with a minimal of capital, loads of can-do mentality, but of course, plenty of creativity.
And this creativity and resourcefulness is what I see every single day in my job as innovation expert at Enable, where I have the opportunity to meet some of those African entrepreneurs and pioneers in person. Like Edith. Edith Kouassi, you see here in this picture. By the way, I know very little people who can post so proudly in front of a pile of trash. Well, Edith and the co-founder of our company, they can, and they have very good reasons for it. When Edith moved a couple of years ago from a small town in Ivory Coast to Abidjan, the capital city, she was shocked about the huge amounts of waste she found in the city. The once stunning beaches and lagoons of Abidjan had turned into plastic dustbins. So Edith decided to take action. Via Facebook, she called upon people to join her in massive cleanup campaigns, where people would come together and clean up entire beaches in just one single day. Now, 4 years later, these campaigns still continue, and Edith is running a thriving recycling business. Her company, Ecoplastinov, has a network of plastic waste collection points across the city, and she's transforming 40 tons of plastic waste each month into paving tiles and bricks for the construction sector with clients all over the country.
And like Edith, many African entrepreneurs come up with brilliant solutions. Often they are low-tech and local, but some of them can compete with the ones in Silicon Valley. Take Minotech. It's a company from Ghana. They developed an artificial intelligence tool to analyze medical X-ray images. This certified tool is already deployed in some hospitals in Ghana, but is ready to be upscaled worldwide. Imagine the impact of this tool in areas where there is a lack of trained radiologists. And this is not only a challenge in low-income countries.
And some of these tech startups have already grown into international ventures, like Hello Tractor. The application already dubbed the African Uber for tractors. Hello Tractor was launched 10 years ago by a Nigerian entrepreneur to link African small-scale farmers with tractor owners. Currently, the application is available in 16 African countries, serving more than 1 million farmers.
And if we look around us, we see a lot of organizations partnering with Africa, like Collect and Go, the online shopping service of the Belgian retailer Colruyt. They developed a cool box to keep your groceries fresh. This passive cool box could be a true game changer in remote areas in Africa, preventing food spoilage, preventing revenue losses for a lot of small-scale farmers. And that is exactly what IKIK, a Belgian technology startup, noticed. So they teamed up with Colruyt. Colruyt made this patented technology available to co-design a new affordable cool box for milk producers in Ethiopia. And they set up a pilot, and guess what? This project was a real success. So perhaps you remember this story next time you are ordering your groceries online.
And this makes us happy when we see Belgian companies literally pushing boundaries to drive positive change across Europe and Africa. So why this interest in Africa? While in Europe we tend to focus on the risks of new technologies and innovations, and we easily get bogged down in regulations, African businesses and authorities tend to focus on the opportunities. The opportunities of sustainable and affordable innovations to save lives and to create a better future for the millions of Africans that are currently unserved. Africa truly provides a fertile ground to test and scale new technologies.
And this is so true. And I have another example to illustrate this. Take drone technology. The promising technology since many years for medical transport, for blood, vaccines, life-saving medicines. But it was only in 2 years ago, that Europe saw its first medical drone flight transporting human tissue from one hospital to another. It took place in Antwerp, by the way. The main challenging aspect of this medical drone flight was navigating the legal framework. So imagine scaling up this technology to Belgium or Europe. We will need to overcome a burden of administration and regulation. And 3 weeks ago, I had the opportunity of being in Rwanda, where we are implementing a joint program. And heading back from the way from Lake Kivu to Kigali, we stopped at Zipline. Zipline is a US company, and they started in 2016 with medical drones in Rwanda. Today, 75% of all transport of blood is done by these drones. They manage 400 drone flights a day transporting blood, but also vaccines and medicines. And now they are upscaling to 4 new African countries.
And these are just a few examples of the vibrant ecosystems that are emerging in Africa and the opportunities that could bring for both Africa and Europe. That's why back in 2016, VITO and Enable signed a partnership agreement to collaborate on a joint mission, driving global sustainable change by partnering between Africa and Belgium, valorizing VITO's top-notch expertise on sustainable technologies and Enable's 25 years of experience in partnering with Africa.
And it took us to many places. In Niger, we were monitoring massive reforestation by using satellite images and remote sensing. With the authorities of Lake Tanganyika, we are strengthening the water quality monitoring chain by adding specific capacities and state-of-the-art technology. And on this group picture, you can see companies from Belgium and Rwanda from the construction sector, and they are in a joint learning program together with architects and experts worldwide, and exchanging and learning how they can use sustainable materials like bamboo.
And now we get a taste of it. we're ready for more. And we want to reach out to others, to all of you. Because we believe that by bringing together public and private investors, researchers, NGOs, authorities, companies, and startups, magic can happen. Not by looking at Africa as a desperate continent that needs to be saved, nor as a giant warehouse of resources and minerals, but by co-creating as equal partners in this global transition that we all need to make.
And with this mindset and with the lessons learned from our past, we are convinced that Europe has all it takes to build win-win relationships with Africa. But we've always also come to understand that fostering partnerships require time, effort, and above all, trust. Real connections aren't made in meeting rooms or even worse, in online meetings. Real connections are made when people experience each other's realities, when they meet each other in person, when they could look each other in the eye and where they can truly connect.
And no better place to build such connections than a festival, right? And you're lucky, we are lucky, because the next speaker on this stage, Rashid Ali Abdallah, can give us first-hand insights into Africa's contribution to one of the toughest challenges of our times, ensuring clean energy for all. So stay, listen, and connect. And for us, well, we'd love to be invited back next year. But this time, we will bring more of our African peers, because they can tell best the wonderful things they're achieving, not only for Africa, but for the entire planet.
We believe Africa is the future, but only with an open and a positive perception, you can see its full potential. So feel free to go out and start telling positive stories about Africa.
Let's embrace Africa for a better future for all. We're Katrien van Ooydonk and Toon de Isse. Thank you for listening and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Toon. Thank you, Katrien. Thank you for your generosity and sharing your story on Africa. We had some preparing talks, and I have to admit that also my perception, my view on Africa was completely troubled with cliches. So I'm so happy that you unfold our ideas. Maybe one question. For you, Katrien, what will be the next project that you will sink your teeth into after Love Tomorrow?
Well, we are in several projects preparing a next phase, but a very concrete one is in Mozambique. We signed an agreement some weeks ago with the partners in Mozambique, with Enable, and just yesterday I had an internal kickoff start meeting. The idea is to collect local data to forecast floods. So VITO has some models, but we are lacking the local data, so now we need to collect the local data, put this in the model, transform it into information and services for the authorities in Mozambique to be prepared, because Mozambique was really flooded last year with a lot of problems.
Okay. Toon, when it comes to your work on the terrain, I mean, you show us these bright examples of that give us a shot of awe when it comes to what is happening in Africa and the potential. But when you're on the terrain, I can imagine sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes things fail. From your experience, what are the biggest hurdles preventing co-innovation?
Well, I think the biggest hurdle is, what we talked about here is perception. I think when I talk to Belgian companies, for example, researchers, startups, and we discuss potential partnerships with Africa, often I get reactions like, for Christ's sake, what are we going to do in Africa? And at some point I get it, because what we hear, what we read about Africa, most of it is very negative news. It's about conflicts, it's about poverty, it's about misery. Very rarely we get positive news about Africa, so it's very difficult to see the opportunities. And I think second is also like understanding what can be our role, and I think there is also a part of perception where a lot of Belgian organization companies, they don't see how they can be involved, and I think there's still this perception that partnering with Africa is for NGOs, for humanitarian organizations, while If you would go to Dakar in Senegal, Kampala in Uganda, Nairobi in Kenya, you will find innovation hubs, incubators, co-working spaces with plenty of startups, young creatives, tech companies, and they're not looking for humanitarian organizations to come and save them. They're looking for investors. They're looking for the best technology experts, like the ones from VITO. They look for partnerships with companies, with peers. So I think there's a lot of work to do on perception to demystify these stereotypes and to understand how to work together, because we have our way of doing business, they have theirs, to really take the time, understand each other, and connect.
Okay, wow. Toon, Katrien, I really hope from the bottom of my heart that next year you will be here with more bright stories on Africa. Cheer them with an applause, ladies and gentlemen. Katrien and Toon, thank you.